Hello, my fellow Alaskans. We are here once again with the great budget debate happening in the Alaska House of Representatives, or I should say the Alaska House in Juneau. They are currently going to be discussing House Bill 281, the state budget, and House Bill 282, the mental health budget. And this is going to be one interesting debate that's going to be happening today. They're trying to come up with their final version of what is going to be in the budget. From my understanding, it's over $7 billion. That is $7 billion with a B. And they are currently right now just getting things started, doing introductions and stuff like that, getting their normal business done before they start listening and debating on the actual bills. Please take this moment right now to like this video, share this video, make sure others out there are able to participate and know what is going on down there in Juneau. This budget reflects the values of what the legislators in Juneau have, and it's very obvious by what they have put into this budget. If we go by what Joe Brandon keeps telling us, show me your budget and I can show you what you value in life. And their budget clearly shows what they value. It's not the everyday Alaskan out there that is struggling on a daily basis, suffering out there. Paid over $6,000 more last year myself just to try to keep up with the hyperinflation that is going on and the increase in gas prices and energy costs for being able to keep my lights on in my home and the heat running inside to keep me warm. These kind of things have all increased this past year, and I paid out, after I got done doing all of my books and stuff like that, I paid out over $6,000 more than I had the previous year before. And a lot of my expenses in my household have been cut because I now have an adult living in my house, no longer have a child living in my house. I am so proud to say, and she is doing extremely well. And because of this, you would think that my expenses would have gone down. A lot of the stuff that I was always having to pay for, I'm no longer paying for. And but nope, I ended up paying $6,000 more than what I had the previous year, and it's really reflected in this year's budget that they have down there in the House right now that they're about ready to present. This budget lines the pockets of K through 12, the unions, Rasmuson Foundation, you name the nonprofit, the unionized organization, or the education that we have in Alaska, whether it be from the university to our K through 12 and early education. I mean, a $60 million increase to them alone. Another $14 million to the University of Alaska, some of the most corrupt places that we have going on. I mean, they got the worst results in the nation, and yet they want to give them more money. If they were to follow the actual student-based allocation, they should be seeing a $130 million budget cut this year because they got a 10% reduction in the actual population of the student base that's out there. But the base student allocation or student base allocation, they increased it by $60 million, and they got a bill that they're pushing through right now that if they get that one to pass through, it's a $60 million plus increase to their, because it reformulates what the student base allocation is going to be. So today is going to be really interesting. They're trying to buy our votes with a stimulus of $1,300. They failed once again to pass anything that had a statutory PFD through the Finance Committee, and now that it's on the floor, I'm sure there's going to be many different things that are brought up that they're going to want amendments to change that, to bring it back to a full statutory PFD again. I won't be surprised if they want to remove the stimulus back out of there and quit breaking the law and follow the statutory PFD law and just transfer it over. If we completely ignore the POMV draw, and we ignore the money that they pull out of the ERA for the last 6 years that they have been using to pay for government, and we just concentrate on the way the laws really are, and they were to use the tax revenue that they have coming in, the budget was normally right around $4.8 billion a year. what they're proposing is $7 billion this year, $2.2 billion increase. But ignore the increase. If they were just to follow the original budget that was presented from the governor, the $4.6 billion budget, they have enough tax revenue to pay for the entire budget. They don't need to be using their POMV draw. They do not need to be using any money from our permanent fund dividends or from our ERA account. Not a penny of that is needed, and they still have a $3.5 billion surplus. Let me repeat that again, a $3.5 billion surplus sitting down there in Juneau right now to pay for this budget. And because of that, they want to make sure that people like you, people like me, we can't afford to do anything at all. And this has been their goal since day one. So I'm going to go ahead and flip on over to the great budget debate that is going on over there. You guys make sure you like and share. Thank you all for tuning in today. I appreciate it.
Are there any amendments?
Amendment number 1 by Representatives McCabe, Gillum, Vance, Nelson, Carpenter, Prox, Tilton, Cronk, and Kirka, beginning page 82, lines 7 through 12.
Thank you. I failed to make my announcement, so I will make it now before we start any debate. We will allow 3 minutes in presenting the amendment, 2 minutes in debate during the amendment, and 2 minutes in wrap-up, just in respect of everyone's time here. So I just want to make that objection. Pardon? Brief it is.
It never fails. Just when you think they're actually going to get things going and running, that's the reason why I had swapped over. They went ahead and went into another at ease. I mean, we're just minutes into it. This was already at a call delay of the chair. I really do wish they would get their act together and start doing their job. They're only going to allow 3 minutes for each amendment to be read across, and then 2 minutes to be able to debate why you like it or don't like it.
Please come back to order. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move and ask unanimous consent that we limit debate on House Bill 281 to 2 minutes, 3 minutes opening, 2 minutes individual debate, and 2 minutes wrap-up.
There's been an objection. Would you like to speak to your objection? Representative Eastman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I know that there are a lot of amendments to go through, as sometimes is the case, though I don't think we're breaking any records this year with our amendments. That said, I see some of these amendments are in the billions of dollars, and I think it would be inappropriate for us to limit a $1 billion+ amendment to 3 minutes of discussion. I think the people deserve more time and attention to that, so I would encourage members to vote against this motion, but to be very judicious in their time on the floor. Thank you.
Representative Rasmussen.
We're roughly 90 days from, we're roughly at the 90-day point of session. We haven't even passed the budget off the floor. I think we all need to be very brief in our comments, and I will be supporting this debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other debate? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? The question is, will debate be limited to 3 minutes opening and presenting the amendment, 2 minutes per individual for debate, and 2 minutes for wrap-up? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
29 yeas, 9 nays.
With 29 yeas and 9 nays, debate will be limited to 3 minutes in presenting the amendment, 2 minutes to each individual during debate, and 2 minutes in wrap-up.
The legal
With that,
binding caucus controls the vote.
Representative
Never
McKay.
forget that. The
on
House
amendment
Majority
number one.
Coalition.
I move Amendment 1.
There's been an objection. Representative McCabe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, here I am again. It's been 340 days since I offered this amendment before. Here's your chance. This is a full PFD amendment, full statutory PFD. It's paid according to statute $2.8 billion for permanent fund dividend checks for all of Alaska, approximately $4,200 for our Alaskan constituents. Last year, this failed on a 2020 vote. Surely there's one of us, just one, who regrets not voting yes last year. One person who has heard the siren sound of thousands, the call of thousands of Alaskans that are hurting. It was critical for Alaskans to get the money into their hands last year, and we failed them. And they're suffering even worse today. Today we have record high oil revenues, but we also have record high income to this state. We also have suddenly very high inflation. In fact, the U.S. inflation calculator says inflation is at historical highs. Permission to read, Madam Speaker?
Permission granted.
5 years ago, when the governor vetoed a portion of the statutory PFD, the inflation rate was 1.4%. Today, it's 7.9%, the biggest increase since 1981. Market Watch Economy Preview, February 22, indicates rents are up 4% in the past year, groceries 6.5%. Meat prices soared by 15%, gasoline by 50%. New vehicle sales up 11.8%. Consumer goods such as furniture up 13.8%. Major appliances 8%. Clothing 6%. TVs 4%. In Alaska, for instance, in Quinnahock, a gallon of ice cream is $25 for a gallon of ice cream. Bread is $8 to $10 a loaf. Milk is $4.50 a quart. That's $18 a gallon for milk, Madam Speaker. In Bethel, a gallon of lemonade is $28.99. A fellow colleague asked me this morning, as a matter of fact, if I thought a full PFD was good governance. My answer to him, after thinking about it for about an hour, was listening to your constituents is always good governance. Our constituents are hurting, Madam Speaker. They absolutely need this PFD in their hands. Let's not forget the multiplier of private money in private hands and what good it will do for our businesses who are still struggling from the COVID pandemic. Many of them are rebuilding, starting new businesses. They could absolutely use the shot in the arm that our Alaskan residents and voters could provide them by spending this PFD money. Finally, Madam Speaker, there are 20 PFD amendments. Voting yes on this one will do away with all the other ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Representative McCarty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm in favor of this amendment. I'm thinking of an old cliche that many of us grew up with regarding Popeye and Wimpy saying, I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. Today's Tuesday, and we need to pay the people what they have been anticipating for. Being back in the district, seeing that I paid $5.14 for a gallon of diesel when last year it was $2.18. And it just goes on like the representative from Big Lake was sharing. The people are really needing money, and it's not a handout. It's the dividend that the stakeholders of Alaska have been waiting for, so we should honor that in today's Tuesday. Let's take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Prox.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too support this amendment. It is based on what is in statute, and hiding behind the skirts of the court really isn't a very good practice. Whether the statute was enforceable or not is sort of beside the point. It certainly, in the minds of everybody in Alaska, you pay your bills, you follow statutes. And Madam Speaker, the legislature has not done that. They have failed to change the statute. They had the authority to do that, failed to do that. We're just not paying our bills. to our own people with money that really belongs to them. It doesn't belong to us. It doesn't belong to programs. It belongs to the people. And there's no better time than today, as was previously mentioned. Gasoline is over $4.50. Fuel oil, heating fuel, was up over $5 in the interior. And people really could use the money. We should be paying our bills, and we should support this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I promise not to stand and speak on all 20 of the PFD amendments. I'm going to make my comments one time. And I'd like to start by, with my great respect for the comments made by the author of the amendment. And he made very good points about the high cost of goods that are facing all Alaskans. That's without doubt. But the bottom line, Madam Speaker, is we are policymakers. We are people who are pledged to try to support good, sound fiscal policy. And what I'll ask every member of this group, before they cast a vote in favor of a full PFD, a bigger PFD than what's currently in the budget, is it sustainable? Is it good, sound fiscal policy? And are we acting in the best interests of not just our constituents today, but the people who are going to come in later years? Is it sustainable? Is it a PFD that we can continue to pay out into the future? And if the answer is no, and if it's not good fiscal policy, then I think we all know what our votes should be. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Cronk.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in support of this amendment. If we're not listening to our constituents, I'm not sure what we're doing. And I have a ton of messages, whether it's emails, Facebook messages, texts, phone calls, of people hurting, whether it's our seniors, down to just filling their fuel tank this year already. I'm not embarrassed to say that I've been one of those people that use my PFD to fill my fuel tank, to buy new tires for my vehicle. And the prices we have are not ending this year anytime soon. And I'm going to stand for the people that are hurting right now. We've had the COVID pandemic. That did not help anything. And I feel that, we have an opportunity to put this money into our people's hands, get it circulating through our economy. And this is a good decision for me. So I support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Rusher.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the comments from the representatives from Tok, from the representatives from Fairbanks and Big Lake. But I'm going to make a comment on stability. It's not a question of stability when you have a court ruled that the annual appropriation is required. Not only that, we have a statute which also states that that it's required that we fulfill that statute. Madam Speaker, I understand that we are running into a situation for the last 6 years that I have been a legislator where we keep saying that it's not fiscally sound. For some reason, we keep saying that. And if that's true, for 6 years now, we have not changed that formula. We have not altered the two laws that oppose each other. We have not tried to fix that because it has not come before us before the budget. So that has not been something that's been a priority, in my opinion, to the legislature here. Otherwise, it would have been fixed before this budget gets here. We need to fix it. Change the law, and we'll support the law. But until that law is changed, we need to follow the law. And I appreciate you letting me speak, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think keep my comments brief, probably 1 minute and 59 seconds. Good fiscal policy, stability. Those are two things that we heard from previous speakers, and I just want to follow up on that. This amendment serves both of those purposes, and it is good fiscal policy. The current amendment pays a dividend to the people based on a traditional formula that Alaskans had used for many, many years. That is 21% of net earnings is removed from our permanent fund each year, and 50% of those earnings are shared with the owners of the resource in this state. That is on top of the 50% split between the oil royalties that are being paid by our oil producers to the state. 50% of those earnings, of those royalties, are going into the dividend fund, and 50% of those royalties are going out to state government for spending. The 50% of the royalties that are going into the into the permanent fund are helping to generate the wealth of the permanent fund. As evidence, that wealth is then evidenced as a dividend back to the people. And this amendment pays, based on 21% of those net earnings, 50% of that sum is then paid in a dividend. And that is what people have expected. That's what generations of Alaskans had before we stopped following the statute. This enables us to continue to follow the statute that generations of Alaskans had come to expect. And if we want to have a conversation about doing something different, then by all means, let's have a long-term fiscal policy conversation that changes the statutes to match what it is that the state thinks it needs. Thank you. Perfect timing.
Thank you, Representative Carpenter. Is there further debate? Representative Vance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment for a full PFD for several reasons. And the very first, and what I consider most important, is simply because I said that I would. Alaskans are looking to see if we are going to keep our word. Are we going to do what we said we would do? It's a very simple principle, but it happens to be one of the most important to our constituents. Are we the elected official that they can trust? That they feel that they can send back next year because we're going to do what we told them that we would. We're going to do what is in the best interest of all Alaskans. And this is one action that we know, one item in the budget that will affect every single eligible Alaskan, every single one. And we don't have the confidence that other budgetary items will reach every single Alaskan like this one, but this one will. The principle remains that this is something that Alaskans have spoken clearly on year after year. I want to show them that no matter what I do, no matter how challenging our budget is, deficit or surplus, I'm going to keep my word and I'm going to weigh every single decision. We've had the excuse that we've had a deficit for the past several years. This year it's different, but yet we're still coming up with an excuse of why we should have an arbitrary amount as the dividend when Alaskans are struggling with food security, they're struggling to heat their homes, they're struggling to fill up their cars with gas. And yet it's still something that we feel an arbitrary amount is justifiable. I disagree. I think that this year, above all years, we should distribute the full statutory dividend as the first draw to the people because it's the right thing to do, and a lot of us have said that we would do it. We need to keep our word and show that we are trustworthy Alaskans. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Gillum.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I keep hearing that we're going to overdraw the ERA. So when the Bankers Association was here and then came into my office, I asked them, so where do you overdraw the ERA? Is it 80 billion, 75? They wouldn't answer. I finally kept asking. When they said it hits zero, then we will overdraw the ERA. So until that time, I will support a full dividend. I've told my constituents I will support their full dividend, and I do not believe we are going to overdraw the ERA. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Tarr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to speak and just talk about this. First of all, I wanted to just remind anyone who is listening that the budget includes a $1,300 energy relief check, and that is in response to some of the concerns that people have raised this morning. We absolutely are listening and responding to the current situation and trying to find a way to provide additional support. My preference would be that we send that check out very soon because people are really in need right now, and I think that that would provide some additional support. So I want to make sure that people understand that this amendment removes that energy relief and replaces the dividend. So absent this amendment, right now, there's the $1,300 energy relief plus the $1,280 for a total of $2,580 per Alaskan. So thankfully, we are in a position to be giving more. No one has to tell me about the suffering that people experienced during the pandemic. I represent the third poorest district in the state, the poorest urban district, and I had people send me notes where they were talking about ending their lives because they were so overwhelmed by how difficult the pandemic was. The people I represent had to bear the burden of that much more than many other districts because they work in the jobs where they didn't get to work from home, where they had to go to work every single day at grocery stores, at gas stations, at restaurants to keep things moving along and try to keep the economy open. So I'm very, very receptive to those concerns. But I do want to share a different perspective because when we announced the energy relief check, I started to get emails that said, wait a second, don't you remember that just a couple years ago we could barely pay the bills? Why are you giving this energy relief check now? So there is a different perspective among Alaskans. There are Alaskans that want us to be mindful and save. And what's really important to me is in distributing that additional energy relief check, we're also able to save. Because you know what? The oil prices are not going to stay this high, and we're going to need to be able to pay for the budget next year and the year after and the year after that. And it is true that we need to address the statute, but I find it somewhat disingenuous because you know what? We have a statute about per diem. And so people didn't have any problem breaking that statute and collecting illegal per diem. I was only one of 3 people who didn't do that. So if we're going to say we need to follow the statute, you better be consistent. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tar. Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the members earlier asked the question, is it sustainable? Is the dividend sustainable? Madam Speaker, we've had this dividend in the formula in the statute, and it's been sustainable for 40 years. And nothing's wrong with it, really. What's not sustainable is this massive budget and the budgets we've had before it. What's not sustainable is big state government. And Madam Speaker, that's the rub. We as a legislature over the last 6 years have decided that state government's priority, not the people. Madam Speaker, we are not like Texas, where if you discover resources or wealth on your land, such as oil or minerals, you can develop that and grow wealth for your family and for your community. Madam Speaker, here, the resources are owned in common by the people. And that gets down to the question, who really owns the resources? Do the people own the resources, or does state government? Is the state sovereign or the people? Madam Speaker, Alaskans are angry, very angry, as evidenced by the last 3 election cycles of significant turnover in this body. Huge turnover. Madam Speaker, I believe that's going to continue until we do what they're asking us to do, which is to pay out the full statutory dividend. There is no fiscal policy issue I hear more going around the state in my district than the PFD. People are very, very angry about them not getting their PFD, their share. We call it a dividend because it's a return on investment, their investment. And I cannot fathom the lack of mercy that has been shown to Alaskans through the pandemic. We've paid for so many things. We've had so much money to go around, and we've not paid this dividend. I appreciate the member from Anchor just now mentioning the energy rebate. And I just think that's an insult. We really should be paying the dividend.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Representative Eastman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Appreciate the sponsor for bringing forward this amendment. So let's talk about some numbers. And apparently we only have 2 minutes to talk about these numbers, but they're very large. So this amendment is for $2.7 billion. How much did the state make last year? Our total revenue, our value as a state increased by $29.8 billion. So this year's dividend reflects less than 10% of the revenues, the assets, that Alaska increased our value by last year. Next, we have the fiscal year 2022. I'm looking at $15.8 billion coming to the state, with a projection fiscal year 23, $16.4 billion coming to the state. We're not short on money. Our state law requires that individuals be eligible to qualify for this money. Among other things, they need to apply. They need to be a state resident on the date of admission. They need to have been a resident for the qualifying year, have been present in state for the required number of hours, either a citizen or a lawful resident of Alaska. We're talking to about people who have done their part by the law to qualify for this dividend. Now it's our job to do our part. We have also in state law under Alaska Statute 37-13-140, income available for distribution equals 21% of the net income of the fund for the last 5 fiscal years. That's what we're asking for. We're asking to follow this law. Now there's going to be a lot of things that we are hoping, the authors of this budget are hoping get paid for, that are a lot less important in my view than the dividend and honoring the law. We as lawmakers have the ability any time to change the statute that I just read. To date, we've chosen not to. As long as we choose not to, my vote, the vote of my constituents, will be cast in favor of following this law, in favor of distributing a full dividend to the people of Alaska. They've done their part. It's time for us to do ours. And I don't need to talk about all the people who are now in their later years, in their 70s, an individual just this morning going back into the workforce because they have to, because we have not followed this law.
Thank you, Representative Eastman. Representative Tilton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. If not now, when? We have not addressed the dividend statutes. We still have a statute that is there on the books, and I believe that the people of Alaska deserve to receive that full amount of that dividend that is required by the statute. Madam Speaker, at this point, over the last several years, the people have not received a full dividend. There's been deficit situations. There has been many reasons why we have chosen here as a legislature not to put the people first when we should be putting the people first. Madam Speaker, this year, there is no reason that we could say that we don't have the dollars available to do that. The earnings have been incredibly high in the earnings reserve, and quite honestly, that doesn't matter that the earnings were high. We should have been doing this all along, paying the statutory dividend to the people of the state of Alaska. As you heard from many of the speakers before me, there are many reasons why people are suffering now because of inflation and because of the pandemic and because of other reasons. But again, that is not the reason to pay a statutory dividend. The reason to pay a statutory dividend is because that is what we have on our books, and that we will pay a statutory dividend to the people of the state of Alaska. So, Madam Speaker, I appreciate the discussion a moment ago about the energy rebate, although I don't believe that it is the intention of this amendment to remove that rebate from this budget. This amendment strictly deals with paying a full statutory dividend. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. My constituents, they want the full statutory PFD, and so I'll be supporting this amendment. Folks have mentioned how energy prices are high, inflation is on the rise. Without a full fiscal plan, the ones carrying the greatest burden are low-income folks who can least afford it, and so this is effectively a regressive tax on folks who, are low-income wage earners in the state, and so I'll be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wool.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to point out a couple things based on comments I've heard so far. No, we haven't changed the statute. We have been working on it for a long time. In fact, there are many bills in both bodies right now that do contain a new formula for the PFD. So to say we're not trying to work on it, I think is not true. We are trying to work on it. There are various bills, some between 25% of POMV up to 50% of POMV, and I think the bill in front of us works within those numbers, including the energy refund check that's mentioned and the PFD that's mentioned. It combines for about a 50-50 PFD. So I do think we're within the parameters of the types of language that's going around right now. I will also remind members, as many of you all know, that sure, we say we're not following the law. This statute was challenged in court, and the court said it's subject to appropriation. So technically, we are following the law. We are trying to write a new statute. Hopefully, we'll come up with one. And I think the number that's in this bill is within the parameters of pretty much all the bills that are in both bodies. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Representative McCabe, in wrap-up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One misconception I'll clear up: it does not touch the energy rebate, which essentially is paid out of the PFD fund and is a gift from the legislature to the people that we do hope to get in their hands over and above this $4,200. So, Madam Speaker, I'm a conservative Republican. I'm not supposed to care about people. I'm supposed to care about big business, right? We seem upside down in this body. In this time of need, our people, all of our people, and this is the greatest time of need I've seen in my 63 years of life, all of our people, the Alaskans we represent in our businesses, they need the influx of private money. Whether they're begging for it, whether they're asking for it, we, good governance, good policymakers, we need to recognize the fact that we need to get this money into their hands. Our spring revenue forecast indicates $3.6 billion above what we expected. Most of this we'll be able to use for state government. It's time to put the dividend, which is a fraction of the money the legislature gets to do business that passes through our hands, that the judge that the previous speaker said is ours to use as we wish. It's a fraction of a fraction. It's time to put that into the hands of Alaskans and our small and large businesses. The people know better how to spend their money, what is essentially their money. We can do this. We must do this. The only possible vote for the largest special interest group in Alaska, our people, is a yes vote on this. Our people don't want parameters. They want us to follow the law. They want us to return to them what they know is theirs, which is the money from the resources that belong to all of the people in our state. That's constitutional, that's statutory, that's what we want. I want to talk for 1 second about inflation proofing. I'll be real quick. Inflation proofing is inherent in the fund. We put almost $10 billion into the fund in the last 4 years. We call it inflation proofing. Alaskans know much better. The fund inflation proofs itself. We don't need to be putting money into there. We need to get the money to Alaskans' hands right now. Thank you much.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? Brief it is.
All right, back here just once again. We've had Ortiz, Begich, Tar, and you name it. I can keep on going down the list of all Ortiz, and they are one by one just claiming that the permanent fund dividend should not be paid because they just can't afford it. Ignore the record-breaking profits. They've pointed out literally that is less than 10% of the earnings, the profits that the the Permanent Fund Dividend Corporation has made this year, and they are upset about trying to pay us a statutory PFD. They are pay-for-play legislators, the Alaska House Majority Coalition there, and their votes have already been bought and paid for to be in this majority coalition, to always be a yes or a no for whatever they are told to be. So don't be surprised when the House Majority Coalition, they're going to be the ones whose votes are all going to be a no for the full statutory PFD. They're completely against paying Alaskans what is lawfully owed to each and every single one of us. Really, really unfortunate. And I am really shocked to hear some of the things being said by those that are supposed to be considered the PFD supporters. Let's make things simple. The guarantor brought up the stimulus check of $1,300. Why don't we do what the law says we're supposed to do, and let's not do that stimulus check. Let's follow the statutory PFD law instead and pay us the $4,200 permanent fund dividend that is lawfully and rightfully owed to each and every eligible Alaskan. That's 630,000 Alaskans that would receive a $4,200 PFD. And they want to say, oh, well, yeah, we'll just hand out a $1,300 stimulus check to everybody. That'll make things right. Yeah, okay. Between that and the $1,200 PFD that they have put into this budget, total of $2,500. Again, our statutory PFD is supposed to be $4,200 this year. That is $1,700 less, combining the stimulus and the proposed PFD together, less than what our statutory PFD would be. They need to learn how to follow the law. Looks like they're getting ready to get back on and running here. Wait and see what's going on. Oh, they're running back to their seats. Here they go. Get ready.
For the question. The question is, shall Amendment Number 1 to Committee Substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
18 yeas, 21 nays.
18 yeas and 21 nays. Amendment Number 1 has failed to pass the House. Madam Clerk.
Amendment Number 2 by Representatives McCabe, Gillum, Vance, Nelson, Prox, Cronk, and Kirka, beginning page 82, lines 7 through 12.
Representative McCabe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move Amendment 2.
There's been an objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Okay, well, let's try this one. Amendment 2 gives us a full statutory PFD from a POMV draw. This amendment retains the POMV draw calculated at the 5% of the average total permanent fund balance, excluding the $424 million for Amarada Hess settlements for the first 5 of the past 6 years, for a total of $3.4 billion. The first appropriation, as it should be, will be the funds for full PFD checks to all Alaskans, similar to what I said in the last conversation. The balance, $596 million, the remaining from the POMV draw, would be deposited to the general fund for use by the state. Remember, the state already has a bunch of money coming in, as the representative from Nikiski said a few minutes ago. The state is not going to be broke by the PFD. Very far from it, as a matter of fact. This does not change the total amount appropriated from the ERA. This is exactly the way the budget revenue is supposed to work. Revenue versus spend comes out of the government's half of the POMV, the 50-50, plus the money that they have coming in that is designated for their use that doesn't go to the permanent fund. Remember, the PFD is a fraction of a fraction. This does not exceed the 5% POMV draw. So the argument about overdrawing the ERA and the POMV goes away. Alaskans would be paid first. We finally get to give them first call. And the government gets the leftovers. As Governor Hammond said when calculating a dividend based on the permanent fund earnings, the government should not get 1 penny more of that 50-50, of that half and half, than Alaskans. So why do we keep saying, well, it's within parameters? I guess I just don't understand. I'm confused again, as my good friend from Sitka would say. I just don't understand why we are so objecting to giving Alaskans the money that belongs to them and is part of their heritage, frankly. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCabe. Is there further debate? Representative Christ-Tompkins.
Just for the record, I think my friend from Big Lake, it's an excellent rhetorical turn of phrase. I think the representative from Big Lake is often much less confused than he professes to be. I think he's a very savvy legislator.
Further debate. Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the amendment. I think this is the correct legal approach. If we're going to follow the law on paying the full statutory dividend, and we're going to follow the law on SB 26, the 5% cap, then this is the correct way of doing it. It is not the people who should be suffering because of a 5% cap. It is the government. There is no guarantee in the statute that the government is supposed to get a certain amount of the money. There is a guarantee that the people are supposed to get a certain amount of money of their dividend. So this is the right approach.
Thank you. Is there further debate? In wrap-up, Representative McCabe. Oh, Representative Eastman.
Thank you. I rise in support of this amendment. I want to point out also, my last check, the earnings reserve had $16.8 billion in it. This amendment, including the amount going to government, is $3.3 billion. That is less than 21%. In fact, that is less than the 21% that we talk about in statute. We can still pay a full dividend. We can still give money to the state government, of which the government already has a large amount, to be generous. It is important that now of all times, in 2022, we acknowledge our responsibility to the people. No court has told us that we can't give this money to the people. No court has told us that we can't follow the law that's been on the books for 40 years. No judge has said we can't. Some judges have said we have the choice whether to follow that law or not follow that law. Again, that decision falls on us. Are we going to follow it or are we not going to follow it? Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Crunk.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. As a legislator from what I would say Bush, Alaska, I represent lots of remote villages off the road, on the river, on the road. If we're not giving this money that is rightfully belonging to Alaskans, then let's spend some of this money on building the proper infrastructure so things don't cost so much. I'm kind of shaking my head here. It's like we have extreme high costs. Those costs aren't going away, and this is our opportunity to make sure the people of Alaska have some money in their pocket to make it through the year. I fully support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Vance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can't help but compare this this debate. If we were to flip this around and call this Alaskans pension plan, if this maybe people would think of this differently if this were the retirement and benefit package that other bills are asking for right now for our state workers, because we're losing them. We understand that reality. We hear that in our committee process, that we need to do what we can to retain our valuable state employees because we need them to provide services.
Representative Vance, I'm going to ask you to confine your comments to the amendment, please.
I'm comparing, Madam Speaker, the value of debate of the dividend to every Alaskan to the debate that we have on providing an optimum salary and benefit package to our state employees. How can we place a greater value of one over the other? If we look at this, that is already obligated to Alaskans, to every eligible Alaskan, the value is already there. It shouldn't be something that we have to convince ourselves of. This is something that will provide that same benefit that we argue is valuable to our state employees in their pension plan. This is providing that for Alaskans, that they can buy the food, the medical, or save it away for themselves for whatever need. It's a similar argument. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Spanholz.
Thank you. I will just focus in on a couple of comments that I've made a few times now, and that was that that these are about addressing inflation. Inflation was 7.9% over the last 12 months. If we were to address inflation and a dividend, it would take the dividend to about $1,200, which this budget already does. If this were about high energy costs, then we should deal with high energy costs, which this budget already does. We have an energy rebate of $1,300 specifically designed to address this. This is not about inflation. This is not about energy costs. This is about something else. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Prox.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. As the speaker from Homer pointed out, this amount goes to everyone, treats everyone equally. And if the way we've been looking at it, we're talking about bonuses for retention bonuses, bonuses for recruiting, bonuses for this, bonuses for that. This amount is part of that bonus to everyone. It's just that it goes to everyone equally, as it should. And if those who feel they don't need it would rather give it back and have us spend their money for them, they're of course free to do that. They can send their check back today. Or I guess they could send it back in October when they get it. Whenever they get it, they can send it back. But this treats everyone equally. It is the people's money. We have, what is it, somewhere in the neighborhood of $16 billion in the earnings reserve account, $80 billion, something like that, in the entire dividend fund. And we are just being miserly by sitting on the people's money and not letting them use it. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we should pass this amendment.
Thank you. Representative McCarty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Concern I have is that we have a double bind communication going on here. We're saying to Alaskans that they're endearingly worthless residents. How can you have both? We're saying to Alaskans that we believe in and have for precedent setting for a long time the intent of giving Alaskans a dividend, and now we're pulling that away. Not long ago, I was in Anchorage, and walking along the streets had someone that maybe was homeless, I'm not sure, but they came up to me and said, can I have a buck or can I have your credit card? And I was not feeling threatened, but in my mind, I was like, wow, I would like to say to you, I could give you a dividend of great worth. And that's the uniqueness of what we have in the state. It doesn't matter what social economic status that you're in, every person gets the same dividend, and what a great privilege. And I think we need to give that dividend in this, like this amendment here, to Alaskans because they deserve it, it's there, and let's not do a double bind message to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate? Representative Eastman?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is, the majority has imposed a 2-minute time limit on speaking. If a member is interrupted and someone doesn't understand that what they're talking about relates to the issue, will the time it takes for that interruption and them explaining how what they're talking about is pertinent to the issue, will that be taken away from their 2 minutes?
Yes. Is there further debate? Representative McCabe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The dividends are heritage. It belongs to all Alaskans. That heritage comes from the resources that also belong to all Alaskans. That's our Constitution. It's what our founding fathers wanted when this body, in fact, when this building, both bodies passed the dividend just a few short years after the permanent fund was established. They envisioned that Alaskans would have a piece of the government. In fact, Governor Hammond called them the militant group of Alaskans that were going to defend the permanent fund as soon as they found out their dividend was going away. So what happens in a private corporation? You buy a stock for a dividend-producing stock. As the dividend starts to go away, you start to rethink maybe the board of directors that is causing that company not to pay you a dividend. It's the same with Alaska. This dividend belongs to us. The people know it's there. I don't think they care how much it is necessarily. What they care about is that we follow what we said we would do. There are 2 statutes on the books. I tried the first one. Here's the second one. We need to follow one of these statutes, and frankly, I agree with my fellow representative from Nikiski. We need to do what we can to fix the sort of dichotomy, the problem we have statutorily. That's a conversation for another time. Right now, our constituents are telling us that this money belongs to them and that we need to follow one of the statutes. Nothing that is in this budget follows either statute. Calling the energy rebate not part of the dividend, and we're just going to give you something, who knows what, and who knows where the numbers come from, and then combined they'll be sort of within the parameters of what a dividend is. Our constituents don't want that. They want us to follow the law. Here's the law. We should follow it. I urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall Amendment Number 2 to Committee Substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
18 yeas, 21 nays.
With 18 yeas and 21 nays, Amendment Number 2 has failed to pass the House. Madam Clerk.
Amendment Number 3 by Representatives Johnson and Kirka, beginning page 82, lines 7 through 12.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move Amendment Number 3.
There's been an objection. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, as you can imagine, my head spins regularly when I listen to debate in this body. A few years ago, we talked about how we wanted to do a POMD, how we wanted to have a 50-50 draw on the earnings, not on the earnings, but on the percent of market value, and how important that was. So that's what we're getting here. This amendment, actually, I'll take that back. This amendment pays the full statutory PFD. It removes the energy payment, and it pays the rest of last year's PFD. So this is the amendment that it doesn't come from the it comes from the general fund, but it makes a stop on the way from the permanent fund earnings. So I guess I don't want to belabor this. I think I've had this debate and I've had this conversation. I think this is probably the 6th year of probably putting forward an amendment to this effect. So I think words have been said and I have more to come. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there further debate on Amendment Number 3? Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. As I was about to say previously, What the law says that there's supposed to be a dividend from the people's resource paid to the people. It doesn't say there's supposed to be an energy rebate check. So why are we doing that? Why are we ignoring the law on the dividend and then fabricating this $1,200 energy relief check? I'm not going to venture to guess what the motives are for doing that, Madam Speaker, but my motives are to follow the law and to pay the people what's owed to them. And it's up to the people to decide how their representatives voted. And when you contrast the $1,200 energy check with the $4,200 PFD plus the remainder of last year's PFD, I think it's going to be pretty clear.
Thank you. Further debate. Representative Eastman.
Thank you. You know, we as legislators have authority because we have the ability to write laws, including the law before us that we're debating. We undermine our own authority when we, as legislators, choose not to follow a law.
Thank you. Representative McCabe.
Madam Speaker, it occurred to me that last year I sat through 7 hours, maybe 6 hours of public testimony. People called in, people were there, people were at the LIO, several LIOs, and COVID notwithstanding, many people came out, probably hundreds, 300 I think, over 300. The great vast majority of them were in favor of us following the law, of paying a statutory PFD. One of my fellow members mentioned that maybe there were some that had not shown up or hadn't been able to come that were opposed to this. I look at those 300 plus people that sent us their testimony, that emailed, that called, that came there. I look at them as lobbyists. They are lobbying for 750,000 plus Alaskans who are due this PFD. Yes, 300 people doesn't seem like much until you consider that they are lobbyists for the biggest and largest special interest group in this state, which is our constituents. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Seeing none, in wrap-up, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would encourage everyone to vote yes. It's just the right thing to do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall Amendment Number 3 to Committee Substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
17 yeas, 22 nays.
With 22 nays and 17 yeas, Amendment Number 3 has failed to pass the House. Madam Clerk.
Amendment Number 4 by Representatives Johnson, Tilton, McCarty, Carpenter, beginning page 82, lines 7 through 12.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move Amendment Number 4.
There's been an objection. Representative Johnson.
How surprising. So again, I've stood here a number of years talking about the PFD, and in this case, I come to this particular amendment not so easily and not so quickly. But this amendment puts the PFD back in the budget the way that the governor had it, with a 50-50 POMB. And we had numerous debates over the years about whether we should have the 50-50 POMB, 50-50 of the earnings, and so on. And 2 years ago, we were told the only way that we should get to a sustainable budget would be to have a POMB draw, that was a responsible thing to do. So to me, getting here and talking about this, it felt like incrementalism. Just one more way of not quite paying the full PFD, but we went ahead and went forward with that. Now we're to this point, and we don't want to pay this part that people in this body stood up and defended so strongly and said this is where we had to go. So I'm just giving an opportunity for everyone to vote on what they already voted for in SB 26, few years ago, the POMB. It will, I could go ahead and go back through it, but I don't touch the earnings. I mean, I don't touch the energy rebate in here. We need to have an energy rebate. In my opinion, that should stand alone. Energy rebate might be something that needs to happen. I know Governor Palin took that on a few years ago. The energy should stand alone because this is not, the energy rebate doesn't have anything to do with what the permanent fund itself, dividend itself is. So this is just, again, an opportunity for people to put the money where their mouth is and do what they said they were going to do when they said, we want to have a POMB, not from the earnings, but from the general, coming from the general total overall value of the permanent fund itself. So let's show people that we're not just incrementally going a little bit further, saying that we're not going to, even though we fought, some people fought very hard to get us to this point, now it feels like we're just welching on that. So let's go ahead and do what we said we were going to do a couple of years ago.
Thank you. Is there further debate on amendment number 4? Representative Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really appreciate that this amendment gets to the 5% POMV formula and looks at the 50% split and with half going to the general fund. I think economics prevailing could support that. My only concern is that in combination with the energy relief check. Otherwise, I would be there on this. I think the energy relief check is a bit of a trick to try and separate that from the dividend. We've been working on just the process that's outlined here in Amendment 4, and so I thank the maker for it. My only concern is doing it additively to this other energy relief check. So if there's any way we could just get to the 5% draw from the ERA with that 50-50 split this year, I think the economics are good for that based upon the modeling that I've seen. So I'm struggling with this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McCabe.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. It's kind of cool that we have 20 amendments because we all get 40 minutes to talk. Is that how that works? So as far as the energy relief check, that's sort of an interesting animal, if you ask me. We are saying that we have the money to pay that. I believe we also have the money to pay this, even though I struggle with supporting it because it's not what my constituents want. However, I have had a conversation recently with a retirement fund manager who talked about a 5% POMV for my fund, for my retirement fund, my 401k. And I asked him, I said, what's the optimum? What will keep the fund growing and keep the corpus, if you will, keep it stable and growing and not eat into it and still provide me with a return? And his answer was about what you'd expect, about what the Permanent Fund Corporation said a couple years ago, 5% POMV is the target. He actually said 4 to 6. Right now, with the trailing average that we're using, we're actually below 4, if I remember right, or right around 4, because we're using a 5-year trailing smoothing average, they call it. So this makes sense to me. It was discussed during the Fiscal Policy Working Group. I think it's really the first time I've actually seen something come from the Fiscal Policy Working Group, sorta, and I urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate? Brief at ease.
Hello, everybody, again. Sorry about that. Didn't catch the brief at ease there as quick as I was hoping to. The darn music and their copyright laws and all that other stuff, YouTube will be screaming, oh man, you've done something wrong once again. Well, so far we've heard 3 amendments. This is number 4. Amendment number 4 is for the governor's 50-50 split. James Kaufman once again shows his true colors. I don't know how he got voted in as in the Republican Party. He has openly and willingly sold us all out over and over again. And it's just really frightening knowing what he is willing to do and how often he is willing to do it. And we really do need to be working on these upcoming elections that are about ready to happen. And this is a prime example. Everything has been voted on so far, I have made sure to be posted. The amendment number 1 for a full statutory PFD was rejected along party lines. Those in the illegal binding caucus majority House coalition voted nay, and those not in the illegal binding caucus voted yay. And of course the nays won. They make sure that happens every single time, and we've watched it for 6 years in a row now, and this is no different. Those that we thought we elected to go into office to help us out, like Kaufman, has sold us out too. He was ran on a PFD, and he has voted down every single one of them so far today. And he just made mention on this one here when he spoke that he's going to vote nay again. It's just frightening, and it was pointed out by a couple of legislators there that they are more than happy to be talking about giving pensions to the government staff, the people out there that are protecting our lives, firefighters, troopers, you name it, those kind of things, and they want to make sure that they got pensions so that they are well taken care of. Those Alaskans are covered. Meanwhile, the rest of us who are living either in poverty or just around poverty level, those of us who had finally been able to start putting money away over the years, over the last couple of years, this last year, on the other hand, everything that I personally had put away into the bank is gone. And I am watching my excess that I had is now being rapidly eaten up by hyperinflation, the cost of goods at the store, the cost of fuel to keep my house running, my vehicle running, to keep myself warm, and the electricity cost. I mean, normally my electricity costs are around $120 during the wintertime, and this year they've been averaging $140, $160 depending on the month that we were in. Beginning of winter, it was more around $160 just because of how cold it was outside. And that's abnormal for my electric bills. It's $20 to $30 more than what I would normally pay. I filled up my fuel tank for about $1,000 this past year, about 400 gallons. And now my fuel tank is going to be empty by springtime, which it always is. And then when it comes at the end of the year, I refill it back up when my PFD comes in. And this year, I don't know if I'm going to be able to fill it up. That $1,000 I put in last year, it's going to cost me $2,000 this year to put in the same amount of fuel oil to keep my house warm. I'm not the only Alaskan that's dealing with this. If you live in rural Alaska, fuel oil is a way of life. That is the way you keep yourself warm, because there is no gas, there is no LNG to be tapping into to be able to keep your house warm. That stuff just doesn't exist. And now they want us to suffer even more by not even paying a statutory PFD. We must emphasize here that they don't need the POMV draw this year. They have $3.5 billion above and beyond what the current budget is in collected tax revenue this year. $3.5 billion more than what they projected. And it's above and beyond what they plan on spending for the budget, or at least what they had previously planned on paying for the budget. As soon as they got the new numbers out for this fiscal period for the actual state revenue and oil prices and oil revenue and all of that, the House Finance got back into session again, and their committee, and said, oh, wait a minute, we didn't spend enough. That budget wasn't big enough. Now we need to increase everything. A lot of the amendments that you'll hear later on today, I mean, the first 20 are all for the permanent fund dividend, and they have billions of dollars worth of amendments to add in later on today. and they want votes on these things. One of them is, like I was saying, for the pensions out there. They're more than happy to give out more money to government, increase the budget of government, increase the spending that we spend here in the state, and what it costs to be able to do that, but nowhere do they care about what us Alaskans are going through, the everyday Alaskan that's not on the government's dole. We don't work for unions. We're not in NEA Alaska. We're not a teacher. We're not in the school districts. We're not in the universities of Alaska. We're not in the Rasmuson Foundation. Ivy Spinonsholt, who just walked across the screen there, she's a prime example of who works for unions and nonprofits. Kelly Merrick, Guarantar, Olson, looks like Kaufman has sold out, and the list is just endless. Those that are sitting there in Juneau right now that are so willingly willing to just take the money away from us all and spend it any way that they can. Just to give you an idea on the last vote, which was for the full statutory PFD, it removed the energy stimulus. The full statutory PFD would be $4,200 this year. The stimulus would have been $1,300 if they kept it in it. This was to remove that, give us a full statutory PFD, and follow the law as it is written. And the legislators voted it down. I mean, it was voted down by 22 people out there. Clayman was one of those that voted down for this. And Matt Clayman and Harriet Drummond, Bryce Edgman, Fields, Sarah Hannon, Hopkins, Josephson, Kaufman, JKT, Crest Tompkinson, who I believe is also under an FBI investigation right now for pay to play for corruption, which is why I believe he was one of the ones that just recently announced he's not going to be running in this year's election for 2022. He's not looking to retake his seat. He has not filed for any other office out there. And the Natasha von Imhoff is another one that is also, I believe, under an FBI investigation right now for pay to play. And this was all broken back in November of last year. One outlet picked it up again in January, and I am picking it up now, and I will be emphasizing that here on out on a video that I will be doing later on, exposing a lot of the corruption that is going on down there in Juneau and the investigations that are going on. Did you know that 19 legislators in the Senate were talked to by the FBI back in November, and these investigations are not over. They're still ongoing, even though the mainstream media is not talking about it. They just act like they're just not interested in exposing the corruption. I thought that's what media was for originally, and then now I find that it's more about keeping those things under a lid unless it works for the left's agenda, the spend more socialist agenda, the critical race theory agenda. If it goes along those kind of lines, then the media is all over making sure everybody hears about it. But the minute it has anything to do with protecting Alaskans' futures, our ability to be able to move forward in life, that they are silent. They're quiet about it. When it came to this budget debate that's going on right now, I read what mainstream media had put out there, and is anybody else surprised even in the least that the budget itself and the amount of money that they got coming in is far and beyond what they're supposed to be spending, but the corruption is so bad down there that they're not spending it wisely. They're increasing the budgets. They're going to make next year's budget be well above $5 billion. So when oil prices decide to tank again, they don't have all this excess revenue coming in, they're going to find themselves not able to pay for the budget. This is the reason why they're doing this, is so that they can justify stealing the PFD. And if they actually followed the law, they continued with the flat budget, only increasing for inflation, the budget would have increased, but they would have had $3.5 billion sitting in surplus that they could have put away in the CBR and the budget that is the savings account of Alaska Ledge. They still don't need a single penny of the permanent fund dividend to pay for this year's budget. They don't need a dime of it. but that's not what they're spinning here in front of us today. That's not what the media has been spinning since January or for the last 6 years. They're all spinning it as, oh, the money just isn't there. Ignore that $80 billion. Ignore that we broke all projected revenue of where the PFD fund would actually be at this point in time. I mean, their projections would have been 10 more years plus before our PFD account, the earnings reserve and all of that, the corpus would have ever reached $80 billion. That was in their 10-year plan, and this was last year's 10-year plan. And that was before the record-breaking $20 billion plus that came rolling into the ERA account from all the earnings that had been made. This year has slowed down dramatically. We're not seeing the $20 billion that we had gotten the year before, but we have seen almost $10 billion. And they're only proposing to pay a statutory PFD, the $4,200 to 630,000 eligible Alaskans out of the 730,000 to 728,000 Alaskans that we have here. That 630,000 Alaskans would be a $4,200 PFD. That's only $2.8 billion of those record-breaking returns that they saw again this year. Like I said, almost $10 billion. It's only $2.8 billion easily, and that's less than the POMV draw that they don't need to do this year. It's not even close to even touching the full amount of the full POMV draw. I mean, that's supposed to be $4 billion for that draw this year, $4.1 billion if I've read the numbers right and seen from the correct people. So $4.1 billion would be the POMV draw this year, and they can't afford to give us $2.8 billion of that in output for our permanent fund dividends, a $4,200 PFD to each and every eligible Alaskans. They say they just don't have the money to afford that. It really just goes to show how corrupt they really are, that how willing they are to lie to all of us about what the future is going to hold and entail for each and every one of us. It's amazing how quickly they go from amendment to amendment to amendment here and never get we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs waiting for them to do their jobs down there. And most of the people that are missing from the room right now are the Alaska House Coalition and the House Coalition majority, the corrupt ones that have voted no. And just to go for the last vote, I'm going to go through all the names in red. We got Clayman, Drummond, Edgman, Fields, Hanna, Hopkins, Josephson, Kaufman, Crest Tompkinsons, LeBon, Merrick, Kelly Miracle, that's another story all in itself, Ortiz, Siraj, Snyder, Poison Ivy, Spinansholt, Story, Stutz. Oh my God, there's another one that could spend days and weeks just describing how corrupt she is. Tar, another one. Thompson, Chris Tuck. Oh man, oh, Law and Order man. Yeah, right, just like Clayman. Wool, who already advocated that, we got statutory PFD bills that are in there. Yeah, they're bills that they have in the House right now, do nothing but steal the entire PFD and may or may not, on the whims of legislators, pay us a PFD at all. And then the very last one, Zilowski, who never should have won her election for the Bethel, the northern region up there. Willie Keppel, I believe, would have had that election hands down in 2020 and had won that seat instead of her, but because there are strict COVID lockdowns, he was locked in a village of roughly around 300 people with no way to fly out to get into Bethel, the main hub for all those villages, where Zilowski was sitting, smoozing and kissing butt to the universities and the healthcare that are sitting there in the K through 12, and lobbying all of them for their votes, while he was stuck in a village with basically no internet and no way to fly out, because unless you were a medical reasons only was the only reason why you were allowed to catch a plane at that time, because of the lockdowns that they had imposed. It's just amazing. I mean, just shake my head. Kaufman needs to go. Kelly Merrick needs to go. Zilowowski needs to go. Representative Spinansholz needs to go. Someone needs to run against Matt Clayman. He calls himself the law and order guy who was all for SB 91. We can't forget about SB 91. That's one bill right there that gave us a revolving door on crime, where the crime sprees were astronomical, where the police weren't even getting a chance to file their paperwork before the criminal was already re-released back onto the streets. And then when they finally repealed it, I believe it was with HB 39 is the bill, when they were finally able to repeal that bill, it was amazing. All of a sudden, we're no longer hearing of the big crime wave out there anymore. All of that stopped. But many of the legislators that you see in the room today, the ones that I just named off that were in red, they wholeheartedly are willing to continue to keep passing stuff that is detrimental to all Alaskans, that really infringes upon our freedoms that we have, continues to keep growing the budget and government, and just shoves the bottom line, tells Alaskans to bend over. We're going to shove our policies up your woohoo, and you guys need to decide how you're going to survive after that. It looks like they're slowly starting to move back in towards their seats there in the background. I'm wondering if that means they're actually going to get themselves back on the record and vote on this Fourth Amendment. Oh, I just don't know what to say. I mean, the first 20 amendments are all for the PFD. They're back.
Madam Clerk.
Amendment number 1 to amendment number 4 by Representatives Tarr, Carpenter, Snyder, McCabe, beginning after page 1, line 1.
Representative Tarr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to members for your patience in getting this amendment drafted and distributed. The conversation around
Representative Tarr, you need to move your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move amendment number 1 to amendment number 4.
There's been an objection. Representative Tarr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We were having the conversation about the underlying amendment and how it represented the 50-50 proposal for the dividend. And if we remember last summer, as we worked through our budget, one of the outcomes was to create the bipartisan bicameral fiscal policy working group. And I want to be very complimentary to those folks because it was a difficult year and they spent extra hours, hundreds as I understand, working on trying to come up with a proposal that represented the diversity of views, and this is what this intent language represents. So I'm a supporter of the 50-50 proposal, but what we know from their work is that the full fiscal plan needs to include a spending cap, $300 to $500 million of new revenue. That could be through a sales tax or income tax, and then continued work at budget reductions. These items, as I understand it, the 50-50, the spending cap, the $300 to $500 million of new revenue, and the continued work at budget reductions represents the work of that bicameral bipartisan fiscal policy working group. It is the work that needs to be the work of the legislature. I fully believe it's been far too many years for us to not address the need for a full fiscal plan. It's much more detailed than we can accomplish in intent language on the floor, but I think it's very important that we have this conversation because we need to move forward. We know that we're losing hundreds of millions of dollars in investment every year because of the fiscal uncertainty. That's not good for our state. That's not good for our economic recovery. And so I please, ask folks to consider supporting this because it's an important message that we need to send to the public that we're serious about working on a fiscal plan, and the time for working on that fiscal plan is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate on amendment number 1? Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This includes $300 to $500 million in new revenue. My question is that expected to be taxes, possibly an income tax? And I was just curious about that.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Representative Fields.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I like the recognition here that paying a larger dividend does require new taxes, whether it's an income or a sales tax, and that's just a simple fact.
Further debate, Representative McCabe.
Madam Speaker, I would debate that paying a larger dividend means that we need an income tax. That's obviously we need to have some math classes, I believe, where we talk about a 50-50 split and how the dividend is on one side of the equation and taxes, revenue, spend are on the other side of the equation. The dividend has nothing, zero, nada to do with income taxes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Representative Eastman. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, the amendment to the amendment is intent language. It doesn't really serve anything other than to just give us an opportunity to share our thoughts about what our intentions might be. It's not binding. But it is an opportunity to talk about fiscal policy. The underlying amendment is a recognition of a 50-50 split of the POMV. What it highlights, what it serves to highlight, is the failure of that amendment, which I think is coming here in just a minute. I think the binding caucus rule is in effect, and this amendment's going to go down in flames. But we can talk about it. So, what this amendment is recognizing is that some of us think that we ought to have a 50-50 split of our permanent fund earnings. If we can't get a full statutory dividend, because there aren't enough Alaskans that think that is what we should do, then why not compromise and get a 50-50 split of the POMV? What this amendment going down in flames signifies is that, too, is not acceptable to this majority. What we're actually going to pay is a 25-75 split of the permanent fund earnings. That is what is currently in the budget. We're going to give ourselves credit, if you don't pass this amendment or the amendment to the amendment, we're going to give ourselves credit for spending and sending out a 50-50 split worth of money, but we're going to call it a dividend and we're going to call it an energy relief payment. It's the same number. It's the same number. The amendment to the amendment is identifying that if we're serious about compromising, this right here, this amendment, is what it looks like. That's what compromise looks like. It's agreeing that we stick with a 50-50, 5% POMV and a 50-50 split of the earnings, and we continue to, as a comprehensive package, talk about new revenues, reductions in spending, and a spending cap for the future. That is what it looks like.
Thank you. Representative Carpenter. Representative Wool. Excuse me, Josephson.
I object to the amendment. The Fiscal Policy Working Group had the numbers on new revenue of 500 to up to 500 to 700 million. So this is not reflective of their work. That's one problem. Yes, we have new revenue, but ladies and gentlemen, if you look at a 30-day average of oil prices, you don't get the $1.2 billion the governor looked or identified as peak revenue during the highest of the high in March for FY23. And the other thing is, I already knew all this. I saw the working group report. It was a bipartisan product. I get it. But this doesn't tell me anything I didn't know. And I just oppose it.
Representative Vance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I find it interesting that there's consternation on intent language to an amendment that has been discussed at great length. I just want to make it clear for the public who may be confused by some of the comments, nowhere in the language does this talk about taxes. It says new revenue. In fact, permission to read, Madam Speaker, briefly?
Briefly.
I just want to be clear that this says the intent of the legislature that this 50-50 proposal for the dividend be part of a full fiscal plan that includes a spending cap, 300 to 500 million of new revenue, and continued work at budget reductions. That should sound like a pretty simple compromise. The time that we need a fiscal plan is when there's uncertainty, and we've certainly had that in our budget for a number of years. The only reason that I would be supporting this intent language is because I've continued to be an advocate that we have a plan. I don't like the 50-50 split. But I want to make it clear that I believe that we could be creative on what new revenues look like instead of trying to fit a square peg in a round hole of continuing to talk about taxes over and over and over again. And yet Alaska has made it very clear that we need to do much more than that. We can talk about other creative ways to build new revenue. We can also talk about what it means for some creative budget reductions and still provide services. Pretty simple language. This isn't selling the farm on any particular thing. It does say a 50-50 compromise, which is a grand compromise to get any support from a lot of us members. I'm supporting this language because I want to continue the conversation on a full fiscal plan, not because I'm capitulating. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative McCarty?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I greatly appreciate the writing of this amendment in that aspect of the intent, and in the aspect of previous speaker, concur with the things that she stated. I want to reiterate the piece of, as we're looking at revenue, it's not asking for new taxes, it's asking for releasing Alaska to do what it does best, and that we're open for business and opening up the state for business with infrastructure, with compacts with other states that allow workers to come in to do what we could do best. I know there's a number of businesses that are right now thwarted from doing and expanding their ability, which would produce revenue. And so it does not require a new tax type thing. It's just asking us to take a serious look at this, which the group has looked at this, and appreciate the intent of the language here of the amendment. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Christ-Tompkins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A couple of things. I think there was a mention of binding caucus by the member from Nikiski, which I would gently push back on and is incompatible just with the sponsorship of the very amendment he's speaking to, and also some of the votes that we're seeing today. So respectfully, I want to correct the record there. But in terms of the substance of the amendment, I'm not in alignment with some of the numbers prescribed, but I am strongly supportive of the process and the outcome of a compromise. This is a fiscal problem as much as a political problem, and while I'll continue to cast the votes that I have been today in terms of the amendments that we're considering on the dividend and other issues, because that's sort of my policy ideal, I very much believe in compromise and that we need to broker a solution to the political and fiscal problem we have now. And it's very clearly not sustainable what has been happening in Alaska the last 3 to 4 years. And the numbers in this amendment may not be my preference, and I think I'm going to cast a yes vote more in support of a process rather than a prescriptive sort of numeric outcome that the amendment outlines. But I think it is important.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Representative Wool.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I applaud the work of the working group. They worked very hard on this issue for quite a while. It was 8 members, 4 from each body, as it was mentioned. That's a total of 13% of the 60 of us. I put forth that if a different 8 members were put together, they might come up with a different set of agreements. That being said, the agreement that came out of this group was never put forward as a bill. We never voted on it. It was discussed, and that was a good tool and a good starting point. But I don't remember any of us voting for it and saying, this, we get behind, and let's move forward with this. So I think it was good for discussion. In answer to the question from the member from District 2, what kind of revenue is it? That's exactly it. The working group never said definitively, this will be an income tax, this will be a sales tax, this will be an oil tax. It was left open, and it still is left open. And people say, well, don't worry, it's not going to be an income tax, it's going to be an oil tax. Sure, when oil is $100, $110, an increase in oil tax would pay for it. But if oil goes down, guess what? That revenue goes away. So then you say, what would the revenue be then if you want to stick with this agreement? I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done on this. We will continue to work on this issue, but I don't support the language of this amendment to the amendment, and I personally applaud the work of the working group, but I wouldn't sign off on that document myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am conflicted, but I'm going to rise in opposition to the amendment. I appreciate the work of the Fiscal Policy Working Group, but I cannot at this time support the 50/50 plan. It equates to a significant increase in available assets under the law for the government, and we have a huge state government. I support cutting that government. This amendment speaks to budget reductions. I appreciate that, but it doesn't give a number. But it does talk about $300 to $500 million more in revenue, and it gives me pause.
In wrap up, Representative Tar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really appreciate the conversation here, and I do hope Alaskans are watching because that's who we work for, and I want them to know what's going on. We need to have a fiscal plan. We need to have a fiscal plan right now. We needed a fiscal plan last year. We needed one the year before. It is not good for our state to continue in this way. I mentioned that we know we're losing hundreds of millions of dollars investment each year because of the fiscal uncertainty. A lot of people are leaving Alaska. You know, that's exacerbating the labor shortage that we have right now. So we're the ones that need to do this work. I applaud that this diverse group was willing to sign on to this amendment and show that we do need to work together and create some kind of compromise. I'm fully aware it's probably not going to be 100% what I like. And I hope everybody else will get comfortable with the idea it's not going to be 100% of what you would like either. And I hope you'll share that with your constituents, that it's not going to be 100%. We're going to have to compromise. And I believe if we were showing true leadership, that we would find a way to compromise and come up with some kind of solution. Now, people have talked about some of the elements of this, and that's why we need to have these difficult conversations and move them forward. I don't understand why Alaskans would want to say the only option would be to cut a dividend that goes to Alaskans. In 2019, 2.26 million visitors came to Alaska. That is very impactful on our roads, on our public safety, on our public services. We could ask those 2.26 million visitors to contribute a small amount towards the public services they use. Because, by the way, Alaskans travel more than any other residents of any state. Every time you go to Seattle, you pay their sales tax and you help support the public services of the state of Washington. Shouldn't we ask the people who come to Alaska to contribute just a little bit to the public services they enjoy while they're here? We know that more than 20% of our workforce are out-of-state workers. Couldn't we ask them to contribute a little bit towards the road maintenance so they have safe roads to drive on? Or, you know, towards having public safety so that if they break down on the side of the road that they have troopers to come save them? We need a fiscal plan. I ask for your support. Please, let's show leadership. Let's show Alaskans we're serious about our job and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? Brief it is. Come back to order. Are you ready for the question? Question is, shall amendment number 1 to amendment number 4 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
22 yeas, 17 nays.
With 22 yeas and 17 nays, amendment number 1 to amendment number 4 has passed the House. We are back to amendment number 4. Brief it is.
Sorry about that, everybody. I had a couple of other things. I had another phone call going on with a customer of mine. Oops, forgot to turn off the other phone there. And so, yeah, I'm trying to deal with some stuff when they went into at ease here. So amendment number 1 to amendment number 4, the governor's 50-50 PFD split, has just been voted yay for along party lines. This brings in the bicameral PFD work groups, or not the PFD work group, but the bicameral work group that got together last year that was supposed to be being discussed during the special sessions, which obviously didn't happen because the Senate didn't even meet at all. Excuse me. And the House worked on everything but what was actually in the bicameral groups, work groups stuff out there. They were working on how to steal the PFDs is basically all they did the last 4th special session. And the Senate never met at all because the only ones that had bills in front of them was the Senate Finance, and they refused to bring any of them to the into the committee to be discussed and worked on. So nothing happened in the Senate.
Will the House please come
And
back to order?
oh, they're back.
Madam Clerk.
Amendment number 2 to amendment number 4 by Representative Eastman, following page 1, line 2 of the amendment.
Representative Eastman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move Amendment 2 to Amendment 4.
Hearing no objection. There's been an objection. Representative Eastman. Brief it is.
Boy, that sure didn't take them very long for them to go back at ease again. It just never seems to fail how often they do that. But this is now... Oh, they're back.
The objection has been withdrawn. Is there further objection? Representative Rasher.
I'm just wondering what...
Oh.
I think should it be introduced?
Oh, yes. You're objecting, Representative Rasher?
Yes.
Okay. Representative Eastman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just adding language that would say it is the intent of the legislature that the department pursue efforts to increase production of Alaska's oil and gas resources.
Further debate. Representative Rasher.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I'm just wondering from the maker of the amendment, what's the definition of the department here? I'm not quite sure I understand what department we're talking about. Thank you.
Further debate. Representative Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this is important. Too often when we talk about revenues, we talk about pulling more money out of the existing economy rather than growing our economy. So I thank the amendment maker for pointing at what's really essential, which is growing our economy through new or increased production. Thank you.
Thank you. In wrap-up, Representative Eastman.
Thank you. Yes, and to answer the question from the member from Sutton, the oil and gas resources are considered natural resources here in Alaska, so it's our Department of Natural Resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall amendment number 2 to amendment number 4 on committee substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
18 yeas, 21 nays.
With 18 yeas and 21 nays, amendment number 2 to amendment number 4 has failed to pass the House. Madam Clerk.
Amendment number 3 to amendment number 4 by Representative Kaufman, following page 1, line 19 of the amendment.
Representative Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The intent of this is...
Representative Kaufman, you need to move your amendment.
Oh, thank you. I move amendment number 3 to number 4. Thank you.
There's been an objection.
Thank you for the objection.
Representative Kaufman.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So the intent of this is to delete the material which creates the special appropriation for energy relief, and to essentially make amendment number 4 a dividend. So rather than a combination of the dividend and the special relief, it simply removes that language in order to get back to the amount that would be the dividend if the dividend were calculated using the 5% PUMV 50/50. Thank you.
Representative Snyder.
Madam Speaker, I move my objection.
Is there a further objection? Representative McCabe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm confused. Go figure. What happens on amendment number 4, line 13, where it talks about page 112, line 6? Is that usurped by this amendment? I guess that would be, so how do we deal with that, 13, 14, and 15 in line on amendment 4? I guess that's a question. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Representative Kaufman, in wrap-up. Representative Kirka. Further debate?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm conflicted on this one. While I agree with the sponsor of the amendment, I think we should be paying the dividend, not the energy rebate or the energy relief check. I think that would be far more meaningful for Alaskans. I will be supporting it because those other amendments have failed. I'm sorry, I will be opposing it because those other amendments have failed, and this is at least some money going to Alaskans in the form of some semblance of a dividend.
Is there further debate? Representative Eastman.
Thank you. To respond to the question from the member from Big Lake, the language on page 112, line 6 is being deleted. So that would no longer be the case. There would no longer be a special appropriation for energy relief if this amendment passes. I find myself in the position of being mixed on this amendment. Yes, I think if we are going to have a 50/50 dividend, it should be coming from the earnings reserve account, and it should not be coming in the form of something other than a dividend. It shouldn't be called an energy rebate. It shouldn't be called a surplus check. It should be called a dividend because it's coming from the earnings reserve account. It's in keeping with the dividend program and the statute which provides for that program. That said, the 50/50 is itself not following the statute. It is a lower amount than the statute would anticipate the dividend be, and this amendment will remove money which could go towards filling that gap so that Alaskans have the money from a statutory dividend. So I'm mixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Representative Kaufman, in wrap-up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the questions and the subsequent explanation. I appreciate it all. And the intent here is to just get, if we're going to hand out a check, let's just call it what it traditionally has been called. I know some may have concerns with precedents being set on that, and I guess they'll vote accordingly. But the idea for me is to get to a sum that I know that models against all the fiscal models, which is the amount less the energy stipend, the energy relief bill. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? Question is, shall amendment number 3 to amendment number 4 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
9 yeas, 30 nays.
9 yeas and 30 nays. Amendment number 3 to amendment number 4 has failed to pass the House. We are back to amendment number 4. Is there debate on amendment number 4? Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be opposing this 50-50 PFD amendment. My constituents want us to follow the law that's on the books for a full PFD. They don't want me to negotiate to find different ways that we can go outside the law. If we diverge from the full PFD, then it's just a race to a smaller number. This amendment reduces the PFD from about $4,200 to about $2,500. And so for that reason, I'll be opposing this amendment.
Representative Christ-Tompkins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I am going to vote against the underlying amendment. I appreciated the opportunity to vote in the intent language, but it's the substance, and as I said previously, I'll be casting votes as my sort of policy ideal dictates, and this is a substantive amendment, and so in the absence of a broader fiscal compromise, I will continue to be casting votes accordingly.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Brief it is.
Okay, folks, they have voted. Oh, they're back.
Seeing no further, Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While I'm not particularly happy with all of the intent language that was added to this, I will be supporting this amendment, and I'm also not particularly happy with the 50-50 plan. This amendment does create a net increase in the amount being paid to Alaskans, and for that reason, and that's the substantive essence of the bill, as one of the previous speakers said, and for that reason, I will definitely be voting for it.
Thank you. Representative Eastman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, too, will support this amendment. I appreciate the sponsor bringing it forward. As to the somewhat ambiguous intent language that was just added, dealing with new revenues, I think my district is very enthusiastic that those new revenues would be coming from our production of oil and gas resources. Thank you.
Further debate? Representative Cronk.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I support a full statutory PFD. I will also support this amendment. If we so choose to add the energy rebate to this total, that would get us close to the $4,200, so I'm definitely supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate? Representative Johnson in wrap-up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this just brings us back to where the governor put the budget out originally. The POMV 50-50 plan that was agreed to in this legislature. Again, it takes a stretch for some of us to get there, but this amendment's put forward in good faith and a spirit of compromise to work forward. At some point, I had heard someone say, well, we don't want to call it a 50-50, so we're going to do an energy rebate. I don't know if that's true. I can't imagine that that's the case. But this is an honest amendment. It does what the statute said that we would do, and so I would encourage everyone to vote yes.
All right, you ready for the question? The question is, shall amendment number 4, as amended to committee substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Representative Prox. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
16 yeas, 23 nays.
With 15 yeas and 23 nays, amendment number 4 has failed to pass the House. Madam Clerk.
Amendment number 5 by Representative Johnson, beginning page 92, line 3.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move amendment number 5.
There's been an objection. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So what this amendment does is there was $4 million for statehood defense in the governor's budget, and $2 million of that was put back, or $4 million was taken out, $2 million put back in finance. So this would put the final $2 million back to bring it back to the amount that was in the original governor's budget. Since statehood, Alaska has had to fight. We've had to fight for our rights that are granted in the compact and by the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Subsequently, the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, reinforced the state's management authority over its lands and its rights to sustainably develop for the maximum benefit of our people. And that's what this amendment does, is it puts that money back in to fight for those rights. The state's experiencing an unprecedented amount of litigation involving the state's ability to responsibly manage and protect its fish and game and other natural resources. And I'll read off some of the cases that are being worked on right now, if I might, Madam Speaker. Permission to read?
Permission granted.
Okay, and so we have a case that's an ANCSA revocation delays, a challenge to delays in revoking ANCSA, Section 17. Biden oil and gas leasing moratorium, coalition of states challenging Biden administration moratorium on oil and gas leasing activity. 40-mile rivers, quiet tidal actions, assertion of state ownership to submerged lands. Koyukuk River, quiet tidal actions, again, assertion of state lands, and so on. These are ongoing and continuing, and some of them are new. But again, and this is over a 5-year period. It's anytime anyone that's lived in Alaska for any length of time realizes that when we roll over and don't challenge things, when we have things brought against us, then we are the losers in that. So I would encourage folks to really think hard about this one. Alaska's statehood rights are paramount to most every resource use that we have in the state.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Amendment number 1 to amendment number 5 by Representative McCarty, following page 1, line 3 of the amendment.
Thank you. Representative McCarty.
I move amendment number 1 to amendment number 5.
There's been an objection. Representative McCarty.
Hey, thank you very much. That concur exactly with the previous speaker that it seems like, it's hard to say never before, but it seems that our state is being attacked from ability to use our state, and the cost of litigation for that is tremendous. Hearing about, dropping it from $4 million to $2 million, and then hearing how much it costs to just protect one piece of litigation, like for instance a river, and yet it's only one river that we may spend $1 million in litigation on, and then we have to deal with maybe another area which is fisheries, or another area with minerals, or whatever it may be. And I think that to give our people enough funds to deal with the tremendous amount of litigation that's taking place now, that we need to do that. So that's why I give the amendment to increase that to $8 million. Thank you.
Is there further debate on amendment number 1 to amendment number 5? Representative McCabe.
Speaker, what a pleasure to talk about something besides the PFD, right? So in the last year, we've seen a 30% increase in litigation for the state. And if we're not engaged, our interest, the interest and the concern is unprecedented in the matters that the federal government is going after the state, whether it be 404 clean water or 404 primacy or the navigable rivers. We've already filed 6 cases, and they're projected over the next 2 to 4 years to cost between $3 and $6 million. This amendment seems to be targeting paying that back, and there's also 11 other cases that could be filed that are just waiting in the wings because I think the 6 that we've already filed are projected to overspend the budget that we gave them several years ago, 2 years ago, last year I think actually. So the cases that we are filing to protect our citizens and our state and our water from the federal government, 10th Amendment cases, they're asking us for money to do that. And I think we need to follow what we said we would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Prox.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too support Amendment number 1 to Amendment number 5. Defending the rights of the state against intrusions by the federal government is one of the most important things that we can do for the people of Alaska. Over the last couple of years, there just has been a tremendous, it seems to me, an attack on the on Alaskans by the federal government. It's amazing how they have just unilaterally overturned decisions that had been made that is costing us tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to the state treasury from the oil that could come from those developments. And it seems the strategy is just to delay and hope that some investor loses interest. That is costing our state a tremendous amount of money. That's just one area where the federal government is attacking the really the rights of the state of Alaska to exist and help its people and fulfill the obligations of the statehood agreement. So I'm in total support, and I ask others to support this amendment as well. We should be as aggressive as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McKay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support the amendment as well as the underlying amendment. Alaska has always had to fight and fight hard to develop our resources. It's never going to end, I'm afraid. You might recall that the Alaska pipeline that has brought us such a tremendous amount of wealth to our state was approved in the United States Senate by a single vote. It was a tie vote, and the vice president had to break the tie. That was Vice President Agnew. So we've always had to fight and fight hard, and right now we're without a congressman, I might remind everyone. Unfortunately, until a new congressman is seated, which probably won't occur till September. So I'm feeling like we're a little bit like the one-legged man in the contest, if you know what I mean. And you know, we've got to help our administration fight because we're undermanned and outgunned, and you know, we're talking about fiscal plans and all the challenges we have fiscally, and the answer to all of that is more production. More oil and gas production will solve so many problems, take so many issues off our table, and I just encourage everyone to support this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With respect to this amendment, I agree. We have to fight back. Every time we argue about how to split up and spend what we're presently available to spend, we seem to sometimes forget how much more is out there to go get, and we need to fight back, frankly. It just seems always outside is trying to shut us down and prevent us from developing as a state, and I believe we need to. So I support this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Josephson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the administration is very capable of asking for what it wants, and it doesn't want $8 million. Well, it sort of does. It got $4 million last year. It wants another $4 million this year. It doesn't want another $8 million this year. If it had wanted that, it would have asked for it. My other concern is that the administration has lost many, many lawsuits. Typically, when it wins a lawsuit, not always, but typically, it's when it files an amicus brief in the lower 48 in some circuit court of appeals. So it's joining in on some action involving one thing or another. It will spend on this $600 an hour in attorney's fees, rather than developing our own attorneys here at home. That's how it wants to spend this money. But again, fundamentally, it doesn't want $8 million. And for that reason, I oppose it.
Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to a question, perhaps for the sponsor of the underlying amendment, not the amendment to the amendment, about...
We're addressing the amendment to the amendment currently, Representative Kirka.
I understand, Madam Speaker, but I rise to a question about the need, as the previous member just spoke. Is the underlying amendment sufficient? Is the $4 million sufficient?
Further debate, Representative Vance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We discussed this issue with the Department of Law in the Budget Subcommittee at length, and I just would like to note that this is a multi-year appropriation. When, in addition to last year's multi-year appropriation that we already gave to the Department of Law, they have not yet fully utilized the money that we gave them last year. So in the Budget Subcommittee, I voted against another multi-year appropriation simply because we have the opportunity to come back again next year, as the legislature is to do and consider the budget every year, to see where they are on the use of that money. I'm a huge advocate for state sovereignty. I believe that we should be doing everything that we can to plant our flag in the ground and protect our state's rights, especially with the feds. I believe that we should do everything that we can to have our own, equip our own in-house attorneys, but also utilize outside counsel that can help us win these cases. However, I have reservation on this amendment to the amendment of the amount that it sounds good to add a large amount of money to this because we feel so passionately about it, but we've already had a multi-year appropriation last year that has not been fully utilized. We can come back again next year and reassess where they are in the statehood defense and how much money is needed to continue the important work that they're doing. So while I'm very much an advocate that we should be prepared and allow the Department of Law the opportunity to be able to look forward with these cases, I am going to be opposing the amendment to the amendment because I believe that we should come back next year and reassess the dollar amount that's necessary.
Thank you. Representative Merrick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I concur with the representative from Homer. The department asked for $4 million. That is what they said they needed for statehood defense. And Madam Speaker, frankly, I am shocked that there are so-called fiscal conservatives wanting to blow up the budget with dollars that the Department of Law has not said that they needed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Clayman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to make note from the representative from Eagle River, the handout in response to the representative from Big Lake. The appropriation last year was $4 million, and what we learned in subcommittee is they've spent, as reflected on what was distributed by the member from Eagle River, they've spent $600,000 so far of $4 million. It's a multi-year expenditure, and we didn't approve any of it in Finance Subcommittee. Now there's a proposal to increase that in the original amendment to $4 million. If you approve this amendment, we're actually putting $12 million, of which $600,000 has been spent. It's essentially a slush fund for the Department of Law. You might be surprised to see a lawyer saying, why not get more money to the lawyers? Why not get more money to hire private counsel? Well, if that's appropriate, let's do it in years ahead when they actually need it. Right now, they've got almost $3.5 million to spend on council before we come back next year and look at this question. There's no no reason to go up to the 12 million that this amendment would do, and I oppose this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Briefings.
So it looks like they got amendment number 5, which is to add more money to fight the legislation or the aggressive actions of the Biden administration and those down in DC and other states to work on opening up our resources and giving the money to the legal department to be able to fight these battles. They currently, I'm understanding, have about $4 million that was appropriated last year, and they've only spent $600,000 of it. And the argument going on right now is why do we want to increase it, give them $12 million total to spend? Just political games, once again. Everything to not help us grow, that's their goal.
Speaker, in response to the member from Anchorage and also another member who also raised the issue. So I just want to remind the body, in section 111, we find that it is unparliamentary and inconsistent with the independence of a legislative body to refer to the name or office of the executive in order to influence the vote. The fact that the governor or his staff want or don't want something should not indicate whether or not we should, on behalf of the people, support it. It's fine, of course, to reference what has been asked for in the budget. That's a fact. That can be described. No objection there. It's when a member goes that next step and says, and the government either wants or doesn't want something. Again, that's for us to decide. Now, in this case, I find that, prior to the Biden administration coming into office, there was less need. Not no need, but less need.
Representative Eastman, please confine your comments to amendment number 1 to amendment number 5.
That's what I'm doing, Madam Speaker. Please do not interrupt me. The Biden administration
Representative Eastman, it is inappropriate for you to speak to the speaker in that manner. I am going to remind you one time.
Madam
You
Speaker,
may continue.
I call a point of order, and I reference Section 578.5. The presiding officer may not interrupt a member who has the floor. The only exception given is when a member is violating the rules. I'm speaking to the need for this amendment because of the Biden administration's actions against our state's natural resource protection.
Brief it is.
Speaker, Section 92, interruption of a member who is speaking in Mason's manual. Brief permission to read.
Permission granted.
There are circumstances under which a member may interrupt a member who is speaking and present a question for action or decision. A member who is speaking may be interrupted only when some question requires immediate consideration. I also want to point out Section 243. And then into the last behavior, I want to point out people in Mason's Section 126.3 states that a question concerning the conduct of the presiding officer should not be presented by way of debate on other matters. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Eastman, if you would like to continue confining your comments to Amendment 1 to Amendment 5.
Yes, amendment to Amendment 5 is increasing the amount from $4 million to $8 million. And I have to anticipate, and I do support the notion that this is in response to what the Biden administration is doing against our state. I recognize the need for that. I recognize that that is likely money well spent. I want to acknowledge that the state has a profound interest in defending ourselves against illegal and unconstitutional action from the federal government, in this case the Biden administration, and I hope that the state will continue to do that whether or not I support this amendment. Thank you.
Is there further debate on amendment number 1 to amendment number 5? Representative Carpenter.
I done forgot what I was going to say. Move to recess for 1 hour.
There's been an objection. You ready for the vote? Brief it is.
Sorry, folks, I am still here. I'm just muting out. They're at eases at the moment, and but I'm on doing work on the side too, so bear with the silence for a little bit. This is amendment number 5.
Please come back to order. The question is, shall we recess for 1 hour? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
14 yeas, 24 nays.
With 14 yeas and 24 nays, we will not be recessing. For the information of the body, my intent is to take a recess from 1 to 2. Brief it is.
Yeah, that's where it was.
Number 5, Representative Gillum.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a question. This $8 million would that be available to fight the Federal Subsistence Board? Because I know they're trying to shut down millions of our acres to residents who don't live in the area, but affects hundreds of hunters that go into different districts to hunt. So I'm just curious if this $8 million could be available to fight the Federal Subsistence Board. Thanks.
Thank you. Further debate? Representative McCarty, in wrap-up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's intriguing how an amendment could cause such a diverse amount of responses. So let me add to some of these questions that were brought up. First of all, this amendment is exactly that piece of that. We, the body here, are looking at the needs of the state. So we're not asking for another branch of government to tell us what to do because we are independent in that process. And we are seeing a rise in litigation issues, threats to our state that we need to respond to. So the first thing of all is that we're not asleep at the switch, that there's a need here, and that need requires that we be able to pay for the expense for the litigation. Some of these litigation issues are not going to the full decision of the court, so there's not precedent-setting dynamics that happen that we could use into future, but rather settled outside before it reaches that point, yet it still costs us to do that. And so to say that a win or a loss is not going to cost us, it does. And so if a loss does take place, does it cost? A win takes place, does it cost? But we need to have money available to take care of those costs. I know of properties that there's potential revenue for the state, and yet it's being held up because of litigation. And so we're trying to avail this so that we can move forward with our infrastructure and revenues to come into the state. The concept of a budget is that of saying, okay, we have this amount of money for these different projects. I'm singing to the choir here, and that's what appropriation is about. But it gives the departments, the divisions, the knowledge of how much money they have in the case of the attorney fees or the litigation pieces that we're saying, we see there's a great need, and so we are going to give you this increase of $8 million to take care of that need. Thank you very much.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall Amendment Number 1 to Amendment Number 5 on Committee Substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
2 yeas, 37 nays.
With 2 yeas and 37 nays, Amendment Number 1 to Amendment Number 5 has failed to pass the House. That brings us back to Amendment Number 5. Debate on Amendment Number 5. Representative Merrick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A lot of what I was going to say has been said, but I will mention the $4 million that was removed in subcommittee. I found a compromise in House Finance at $2 million. That was a number that folks were able to agree on, and although I originally preferred the $4 million. So I have distributed some information, not all of it, but I was concerned, again, with the Department of Law not spending the previous appropriation. But I have been assured that this money will be used, and should it not be used in the 3-year time limit, then it will just lapse back to the general fund. So the idea that this is a slush fund, I would disagree with that. So I will be supporting this amendment, and I am confident the department will use it to fight back the overreaching federal government. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Representative Rasmuson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to note that it was raised by another member previously that Department of Law uses this and pays outside attorneys $600 an hour, which that's accurate. But it was not mentioned that in doing so, they also partner some of the staff attorneys with the out-of-state attorneys who are contracted to help our current state attorneys gain more experience in these areas. And I believe that the intention of the department is to hopefully put measures in place to retain more of our staff attorneys and get them the experience that they need in these issues to be successful on behalf of the state. We've had some great Alaskans who have fought these type of cases themselves. I just wanted to note Mr. Sturgeon and his navigable waters case, and we have many communities in Alaska that are only accessible by water. So we need to make sure that our Alaskan neighbors across the entire state have the ability to travel and do the things that they need to do to live their life. So I will be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Kronk.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of Amendment Number 5. We live in a resource state, and we depend on developing our resources. So I want to make sure we are funded to fight every fight to be able to continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Vance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to have to oppose this amendment too. I know it's not popular, but this is, again, a multi-year appropriation. So we're essentially forward funding the Department of Law for 3 years, 23, 24, and 2025. We already did that last year, and they haven't used that money. Now, I would love to throw all kinds of excessive money at this because this is a hot thing. We have to defend it. There's no argument against that. But just like with all of the other departments, we come back next year and have the same conversation about the need. How much money have you used? How much money do you anticipate to need in the next fiscal year? If somehow they have a shortfall, they come back to us requesting a supplemental. We have that ability. I do not want to get in the habit of continually forward funding things that we consider popular and not having the accountability to look at the allocation year after year. That is our duty as the power of the purse, to look at that need and make sure that we're on top of it. We're on top of the relevant issues. I very much support the concept, but I want us to make sure that we are having this conversation and the relevance year after year. If their money was extra tight right now and we hadn't given a multi-year appropriation last year, then I would be voting differently. However, I'm not going to make an exception for this when I'm holding other departments to a different account.
Thank you. Representative Eastman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the comments from the previous speaker, some of the issues raised by this amendment. You know, the question, I think, is whether or not we should consider the Department of Law's appropriation similar to other departments. And I would say there are many reasons why we should not. You know, we just had a bill that was passed earlier this session dealing with our response to a Supreme Court case. Well, actually, there was a number of different aspects to that, some of which involved the Supreme Court, some of which involved the District Court. If you are a lawyer in the Department of Law, you're looking to defend our state and filing a lawsuit against the federal government, I think if you're optimistic, you're going to say that that court case might go to the Supreme Court, might come back and go to the Supreme Court again, like John Sturgeon's case for Alaska. That is something that is not talked about in months. That's talked about years, potentially up to a decade. And we certainly saw with our political campaign contributions case that it took many, many, many years to go through the process. So if we are encouraging the Department of Law to spend money quickly so that we can justify having money in the coming budget because they spent it all last year, I think that's not what we want to do. We want to encourage them to take cases. We want to encourage them to have the resources to take good cases. And as was stated earlier by a previous member, if the money is allocated to the department in such a way that it reverts back to the general fund if not spent, then I think that's also a great way to give them the resources they need without wasting the money and also without encouraging them to spend needlessly or frivolously or too quickly. They may not need the money right now. They may not need the money until that court case reaches that next level, whether it's the circuit court or the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate? Thank you. Representative Carpenter. I don't know why I have such a hard time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, broad range of opinions in this body regarding defending our state's rights. Some believe we shouldn't defend our state's rights and let the federal government walk over us by evidence of removing this appropriation in subcommittee. Others in the body thinking we should double the appropriation. Somewhere in the middle has got to be a compromise solution here. I can't believe that it would be the majority's position that we should not defend our right to develop our resources in this state. I can't believe that that's the position that the majority of this body would agree to. The simple fact that we've got $4 million already appropriated and that a portion of it has been spent, that is a truth, and we heard that just a minute ago, but that's only a partial truth. The other information that we heard in committee is that we have many lawsuits outstanding, they're currently being engaged in, and the bill for those activities is coming due. So that money, while it may not be spent yet, it will be spent into the future. The administration is asking for more money to continue the litigation and the desire to litigate going forward to ensure that we can develop our resources. It is a basic need, albeit frustrating to have to spend money on lawyers to develop our own state, but it is a need for us in this state to do. We're not asking to double it. We said no. We're not asking to cut the entire money out. We're asking to give the administration what the administration has asked for to defend the state. And if we're going to say no, administration, you're not going to get the money that we asked for, then we are saying we do not want to enable the state to defend our right to develop our own resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Carpenter. Representative Prox.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. I appreciate the concerns expressed by the member from Homer and others about keeping a close eye. That is our job, and typically I wouldn't be in favor of forward funding, and this seems to be, certainly. But this is sort of the Defense Department of the state of Alaska, and we were certainly taken off guard by the last election, and the Biden administration has just been extremely hostile to the state of Alaska. We have no idea what they're going to do next. But just like if you buy tanks or you buy airplanes, you might not need to use those for their intended purpose. Or if you're training an army, you might not need to have them go to war, as it were, tomorrow. But you want them to be ready, and you want to be, or I would certainly think it would be wise for the state of Alaska to have a very aggressive posture towards the federal government, and perhaps that would even deter some action. So with all those concerns about keeping tight rein, I appreciate it, but I think that this is a worthwhile endeavor to make sure that our Defense Department is ready for future attacks from the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the members mentioned compromise. I believe the budget has a compromise number in there, and that's adding $2 million to the Statehood Defense Fund, because in finance there was an amendment to take it out completely, and we compromised and said let's just leave 2 in there. We put 4 in last year for multi-year appropriation. We're adding 2 more. That's $6 million. They've so far spent $600,000, which is about 10%. I understand there's cases out there pending, but they haven't come due yet. They will become due, but $6 million is a lot of money. If they run out of that in the next year, I'm sure the administration will come back and ask for more. There's about 150 lawyers in Department of Law civil side, and they work on this stuff all the time. And it's true that they are learning. When we hire people from outside, our in-house lawyers are learning from that, and we've maybe lost some people that had a lot of knowledge. We need to build that knowledge up. I think increasing this fund will be a temptation to hire more outside counsel when we have plenty of people in-house that can do it. $6 million is plenty for the next year. If they need more, they'll come back. I do not support the amendment.
Thank you. Representative Rafsher.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just wanted to say that I don't think anybody in this room votes things on popularity. I think we listen to the discussion. I think we all try to figure out what's best for our vote when we cast it by what is presented here, along with what we have brought to the table ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Rafsher. Representative McCabe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I mentioned 6 cases earlier, and I said that the department had committed to between $3 to $6 million. That's over the next 2 to 4 years. That's their estimate that those 6 cases alone will cost. They've also authorized $1.3 million in outside counsel contracts related to statehood defense so far. Those are big numbers. I think that depending on a supplemental budget to be a sideboard is a mistake. That's like saying I can't be overdrawn, I still have checks left. We want to put a sideboard on them. We want to give them a hard number of this is the number of cases you can go after. What they're telling us is the $2 million is pretty much already committed. It's already gone. Even the $6 million is pretty well committed, already gone. So they are telling us they need a $4 million, and I think that should be the top number, and we should tell them, hey, here's your $4 million, but supplemental budget, boy, it better be a good reason if you have to ask. I don't think we need to just sort of open up our budget, the supplemental, and say, well, here's your sideboard. It's somewhere over here. So thank you.
Thank you. Further debate? Representative Johnson in wrap-up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So one thing we can say about a lawsuit, they don't end at the end of the fiscal year. They keep going, and oftentimes through multiple years. In terms of the 6 cases that's already been filed with statehood defense funds last year, those cases alone are estimated to cost about from $3 to $6 million over the next 2 to 4 years. We know that attorneys don't bill in advance, so these are estimates. But to date, the Department of Law has spent approximately $350,000 on internal costs. Additionally, the department has utilized outside counsel to the tune of $250,000 in the past 2 months. The Department of Law has authorized $1.3 million to outside counsel contracts related to statehood defense so far this year, and anticipate needing to more than double that amount within, well, over this next couple of years, which is what this appropriation does. In addition to the above, there are 11 anticipated matters that are expected to file within the next year, and leave the potential to amount to additional $8 million. So that's could be where that $8 million comes in, and maybe is something that needs to be considered. These anticipated matters cover areas such as the Endangered Species Act, Clean Waters Act, contaminated sites, resource management plans, the Tongass issues, navigability, and RS 2477. This additional $2 million, which is additional $2 million of what's in the budget right now, brings it up to the governor's ask of $4 million, is over the next 3 fiscal years, and will ensure that this increase in litigation that we're seeing is handled effectively by the state. And with the unpredictability of the costs that are ahead of us, what's exactly will be needed, but we don't know for certain, but it will provide funds to draw on regardless of the fiscal year, and ensures that the state can continue to fight for its sovereign rights. So I would request a yes vote.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall amendment number 5 to committee substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
18 yeas, 21 nays.
With 18 yeas and 21 nays, amendment number 5 has failed to pass the House. Madam Clerk.
Amendments numbers 6 and 7 will not be offered. Amendment number 8 by Representatives Rauscher and Vance, beginning page 82, lines 9 through 12.
Representative Rauscher.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move amendment number 8.
There's been an objection. Representative Rauscher.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, amendment number 1 is similar, but it's not the same. This is just a straight draw right out of the general fund. What it does, it pays for a full PFD this year, according to the formula many years ago. That's, it's in statute. It's something we owe the people. It's something the people are expecting. It's something that every year for the past 6 years we have said, and not myself, but I have heard that we can't afford it. It's not fiscally sound. There's all kinds of problems with paying it this year. We can afford it plus more. And so this is a simple request to follow the statute, which has been in effect for many, many years, and we have not done our diligence to remove it, if that so be your choice. So it's still in existence, and that's what this does. It follows that statute. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Josephson.
I oppose the amendment, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the maker's comments. It's my understanding that this would leave in place the energy relief monies. And so if it's a full dividend and the energy relief monies are paid, something over $5,000 per Alaskan, so a family of 5 would get $25,000 when we haven't raised the BSA in 5 years, and we have a structural deficit that's masked by high oil prices and federal largesse. I can't see the fiscal wisdom in this. This amendment is too liberal, and I'm too conservative for it. Thank you.
Further debate on amendment number 8. Brief it is.
Hello, everybody. Once again, it looks like they're back at another brief at ease, and you can see the room has emptied out again, and the majority of the binding caucus has walked out of the room. And this is on purpose because they are on amendment number 8, and this one is for another full statutory PFD to pay it out. And so the majority binding caucus, the illegal binding caucus, the one that they claim doesn't exist, that sells out our Alaskans' voices and votes to the special interest pay for play down there in Juneau, they are right now trying to formulate what amendments that they want to add to amendment number 8 that will provide the poison pill that they need to be able to get this to be another no vote. They don't hesitate. There's 20 amendments for the PFD this year, and this is only amendment number 5 that they're currently working on. Just a little bit ago, before amendment number 5 was voted on, they wanted to break for an hour for lunch, and that was voted against, and so they're still continuing on. And then they got to amendment number 5, which was something completely different than the PFD votes that were prior to that. And that one was for increasing the budget to help protect our rights, like the John Sturgis case for river rights to be able to travel throughout Alaska, and federal government overreach to be able to fight those kind of battles. They currently have $4 million sitting in what most Alaskans would call a slush fund because it doesn't get spent. And they only spent $600,000 of that in the last 2 years that they've had that $4 million. And the last amendment number 5, which was voted down, was to increase that budget another $2 to $4 million more. And it was completely taken out. And I believe it was Kelly Merrick, Rep. Merrick, that had brought that one forward. No surprise, surprise. Their unions, special interests, keep their pockets flowing of the money coming in to match their agenda. Doesn't matter where that money comes from as long as they get it. So we've had, like I said, 4 PFD votes already. This is number 5, which is amendment number 8. And you can roll through the ones that are there for the amendments for the previous ones. And let me mute that out there. Oops. And we'll just go through them all here. I've been posting them as they are happening, trying to keep up on top of this. I do got to go to work here in a little while, so I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to keep doing this. The first one was amendment number 1. The House Majority Corrupt Coalition just voted no to a statutory PFD on amendment number 1. Every name that is there on Amendment 1 that is in red needs to find their way out of office down there in Juneau, and someone needs to be filing for their seat in this next election, and let's see if we can vote these incumbents out. And majority of them are incumbents. They've been down there for a while now, and a couple of them are brand new that were voted in the last election cycle. So it's going to be interesting with ranked choice voting how well things are going to happen this next time around. But I am expecting a lot of new names to pop up in our elections this year. Amendment number 2, PFD Amendment number 2, voted down along illegal binding caucuses lines again. Those who sold their constituents' votes and votes to special interests, telling those that they're supposed to represent to bend over, your lives and futures don't matter. This was another PFD that would have stripped out, I believe, the stimulus and gave us a statutory PFD under the formula, and again it was shot down. And then amendment number 3, oh no, that was amendment number 3, was the one that removed the energy stimulus. The other one was just a statutory PFD under the 50-50 formula, a different version of the first bill. Once again, it was voted down among caucuses lines. Those who voted for their didn't vote for their constituents and their voices. They sold themselves out. All of the ones in red to the special interests. They're only going to align to their values. And then they put a poison pill into it. And the poison pill was, let me see here. Here we go. The poison pill that they had put into amendment number 4 was the bilateral, bicameral work group that had got together prior to special session number 4. That worked together from both the House and the Senate, a group that was made up of very diverse views there, and they had come up with a consensus on what the future of Alaska should look like for the budgets in the future. And then the House was the only one that took up any sessions in special session number 4, took up any committees, that is, and of course they discussed all the bills that had absolutely nothing to do with the bicameral PFD work or bicameral work groups discussions. That had everything to do with what we're seeing here this year right now with we want the PFD. We don't care what anybody else wants. We're not going to do anything. If you want a PFD, then the only compromise we're going to give is we want tons of taxes. We want everybody's budgets increased. And until you give us those demands, they can't have a PFD. And which is really scary. I mean, the bunch of new taxes. I know you guys in Anchorage and Juneau and all those other places out there skyrocketing property taxes. And this is your last day to vote in Anchorage to replace members in your assembly and your school board and take back control again, or at least a monochrome of control back there. And hopefully you're out there voting. This is your last day. So if you haven't received your ballot in the mail and mailed it out, haven't dropped it off, this is your chance. This is your last chance to actually go someplace and actually vote in person, excuse me. And there's only 3 locations that are open. I believe the one down in Ship Creek, the Lusac Library, and the Eagle River Community Center, I believe is where all 3 of the open voting places are in Anchorage right now. So if you haven't voted, get out there and vote. Please, please do your civic duty. If you want things to change, the only way it's going to happen is for you to voice your voice and vote. And this is your opportunity to take back the school board, take back the assembly in Anchorage, and actually make some changes that are for the better of the community, not for the minority that seems to be taking it down a very dark spiraling path that is soon going to be looking exactly like California. I mean, it's already very similar to California and Seattle in the makeup and the diversity that they got going on in Anchorage. And when I kind of sling that kind of word out there, if you look at the homeless population since they took control, it's doubled. And sounds like they might be getting back into session here. And so I will flip back to them. Again, this budget is humongous. They're back.
Following page 1, line 7 of the amendment.
Brief it is.
Well, that didn't take them long to get back at ease. I'm glad I wasn't fully transitioned back out of that again. And it's just flooring what they think they can get away with. I mean, the poison pill that they put in there saying the only way we'll give you a full PFD is if you agree to new taxes, increasing revenues, and all this other stuff. And the hurry up and wait.
I move amendment number 1 to amendment number 8.
Hearing no objection, amendment number 1 to amendment number 8 is passed the House. We are back to amendment number 8. Is there further debate on amendment number 8? Representative McCabe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I must call a point of order on the member from District 17 because he appeared to be impugning himself. I'm not sure, but I think that is emblematic of the differences we have. The member from District 17 said that he thought that we were giving away too much money and that made him more conservative. And if that were actually the truth, I would agree with him. Unfortunately, we're not giving money away, we're taking money. This is the most egregious tax of anywhere in the country. We're taxing little children that have no income. They live in Alaska, it's their heritage. This is their heritage, and we are taxing them by removing the dividend. Who do we think we are? You've heard me say that before. We are removing their dividend. So I'm sorry to my esteemed colleague from District 17, but it doesn't make you more conservative to tax a family of 5 $25,000. Thank you.
Representative Prox, are you? No? Further debate? In wrap-up, Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I must be in your blind spot. I concur with the member from Big Lake. And I don't know whether you can call it a tax, you can call it theft, you can call it robbery, whatever you will. It's the people's money, Madam Speaker. And it's an egregious tax. You're taxing people who aren't even adults yet, who don't have income, who don't have jobs. I don't like that this amendment is coming from the general fund and not from the ERA where it belongs. But this is the people's money.
Further debate? Seeing none. Now, Representative Rasher in wrap-up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the discussion, but I do take exception to the member from District 17 that there is always an opportunity with 80 amendments to go to fix a problem that you could see in the future so that everything is not black and white for someone to be pinned as more liberal than everybody. But I appreciate if everybody would vote yes on this. Thank you.
All right, are you ready for the question? The question is, shall amendment number 8 to committee substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
17 yeas, 22 nays.
With 17 yeas and 22 nays, amendment number 8 has failed to pass the House. And with that, we will stand at recess until 2 p.m.
12:44.
Okay, my fellow Alaskans, you heard it first. They are done until 2 p.m. today. I am going to go run off and go do a job real quick. I have been putting off hopefully I will be back at the start of this. I will see about maybe setting it up to where someone else might be able to start it for me. I'm not sure yet, but we're hoping for the best that I'll be back before then. We just listened to amendment number 8, which was another statutory PFD, and the twist to this, and Rauscher really needs to have his head get slapped upside the head, and but they wanted to use general funds, not money from the earning reserve account, to pay that full statutory PFD to make up the missing money. So in other words, the $3.5 billion in excess tax revenue that they had received this past year was to be used to pay for that, which is not what we use tax money for. And just like when it comes down to paying for what tax money is supposed to pay for, we don't use the earnings reserve account, the people's money, the permanent funds money, to pay for what taxes should be paying for. So I wish they would get that clear through their head, and this is why I don't support Rauscher, and I never have, is another good example of that. So amendment number 8 fails to pass through. Again, of course, it was across caucus lines. Might have been a Republican or two that flipped over and voted nay against that one, and I understand why they would have, and that was because they were going to use money from the general fund, which I am not for as a true statutory PFD formula follow the law person that I am. And if you can't follow the laws, then you have no business being down there. Just like it comes to the student base allocation, or the base student allocation for students on K through 12 and the funding that they get, they should be following the law and giving them a 10% reduction to their budget, $130 million decrease. But this budget that they have currently here debating here today in front of us has a $50 to a $60 million increase, $65 million if you include the university. Increase to the budgets, 14 for one, 50 for the other, and these increases are all bonuses being pulled out for them. Plus they also have, I believe, bills that are going to be presented today, amendments to be presented to forward fund, using money to forward fund K through 12 for next year with the increases into the budget, which again goes against our constitutional law for how they are supposed to run things. See, if forward funding anything is illegal, just like they tried to do with amendment number 5, forward funding and giving more money to our lawyers to fight cases that they're not even fighting yet. It's like a blank check to go do whatever you want. And so that's where we stand at. I will be back a little while later. Please do not forget to like and share this video, and so that we can make sure all Alaskans get to see and know what is going on down there in Juneau, and we're all up to date on the latest of the budget. I hope my commentaries were informative and I was able to give you information that you aren't gathering from them during these debates. And again, amendment number 8 was shot down, and it was again another statutory PFD, and this one I wasn't too for anyways, just for the fact they were going to use general funds money to pay for a portion of it. But that is now currently the 5th of the 20 different proposed PFD bills that they're amendments that they're going to be bringing forward. That's only number 5. And so we'll just have to wait and see where we go from here. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, don't forget to like and share.